Hey there, fiction writing is a lot of fun. So, Unit 7 is about fiction writing, which is another narrative form, but it's a great fun genre for students to write. This is going to tell a little bit about, again, what that's going to be about. No changes for these next few pages. I'm just going to zoom through those pretty quickly. Here is where you're going to find some examples of mentor texts. And again, you're going to zoom in on that particular page, and those are mentioned in the lessons. Time for you to swap out your writing goals and make sure those match your rubrics. Here's an overview of the lessons. And, again, if we look at these, we know that even though it's in fiction writing, they can apply to lots of other different units of study. So keep these in mind and know that you can be pretty flexible with when you want to move those in. So fiction writing, I want to give you a couple of words of wisdom. When students are writing fiction, sometimes you'll have students who want to write a story that is really just a retelling of a movie they watched, or a video game that they played, or a book that they read. And I want to just take just a moment on why I discourage that. When a student is retelling a story, they're not having to develop the story. That's already been developed by somebody else. So they're not having to think about how the story goes. We will talk about writing in the footsteps of another familiar story, like Little Red Riding Hood or The Three Bears or something along those lines. They can take a familiar tale and then add their own characters and settings in there. That is okay. But we don't want them to be talking about going to the Dark Lord and going to the 4th level and getting the token and all of that kind of stuff. Because first of all, it's a very complex story. Oftentimes it's very hard for even adults to explain how to play a game. Or have you ever sat next to somebody who tried to tell you about this movie they watched, and about 5 minutes in, you're like, I could care less anymore, because you can't follow what they're saying. It's very hard for adults to do it, let alone for small children. So I don't let them retell a story, a video, a cartoon, any of that retelling, or retelling a book. So we want to make sure we discourage that. We want them to be thinking about their own story. Okay, so fiction writing is where they're coming up with different characters and setting and that sort of thing. So we have a character idea list. Again, this is a way for us to brainstorm. It's not an all-inclusive, so turn to your partner and talk about different characters, talk about different settings. So those are there for you. We're also going to talk about different types of stories. There's funny stories. There's stories about quests, good versus evil, happily ever after. So lots of different types of stories. So those are things that we're going to be talking about as well. We also have some idea planning. So there's some graphic organizers and anchor charts for you. So keep an eye out for those. There were a couple things specifically I wanted to share with you. And those are some different word lists that we have in here. So whenever you have, fiction writing, they'll say they said this and then they said that and then they said that. The word said is used over and over again. So here are some different words for said. So you'll see that there's one for the class, which is in color. There's a black and white one that can go into their writing folder. So that's in this unit. We have descriptive words, so those are in there. We have some descriptive words for adjectives and adverbs, so there's word lists in there as well for you. There is actually in the anchor chart, there is a version of Lost Dog that I wrote that you can display in front of your classroom, so that's something you can put on the document camera if you want to look at that. And then, of course, but as usual, 16, 17, 18, those are reteaching class lessons that you can do. 19 is we're going to take one. They're going to look it over in order to fix it up and make it more, to make it easier for the reader to understand. Again, it's not about perfection. It's about moving that writer forward. And then on day 20, you have celebration. Have fun with fiction. We're almost done with the year.